Hello, and welcome back to the Self Help Bookshelf for another podcast today on forgiveness and how we take conversations around personal development strategies and topics to help you find your higher self. So, I'm Kay Reeve, emotional awareness expert. I love supporting adults to help teenagers and young adults through neurodivergent depression. And this is my co-speaker, Rory. How would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, Kay. My name's Rory Lemon. I go by Rory Lemon Aid, AID to help online on the internet. Somewhere you'll find me if you type that in. And I'm a neurodiversity expert and creative flow coach, and I like to help neurodiverse creatives that are heart-centered, hypersensitive, empathic, really break through those self-sabotaging thoughts, feelings, potential addictions, uh, things like that, moving through procrastination and actually get present to what they really want in life, the visionary projects that they could really put out there for showing mental creativity for mental health. And so that's where I thrive.
Absolutely. And yes, so today, this came off the back of talking about the topic of what is love last week. And during that, the topic of forgiveness came up amongst many other. If you haven't seen last week's, go back and watch it because it was a really good conversation. And so we chose forgiveness for today. And I think there was a few other topics I've listed, as well as some more that came up in your workshop the other day. I've got like another 6 months or so, I think, this week titles for us. So do forgive me for my enthusiasm, but we love having these conversations. So Rory, you would you like to kick us off again today with your version of forgiveness, and then I will follow up with some of my own experiences.
Yeah, yeah. So the what I like where I like to think of this as is that it's forgiveness is what is it? It's the essence of letting. In some ways, you can look at it from the internal perspective or the external perspective, and so
Hmm.
often we want to think about forgiving something external in order to appease that relationship in some way to like say, hey, this happened, but um, I, I, I want to not have separation or struggle anymore. So, even though someone did this thing, I forgive that process in order to um, move forwards without grudge and this sense of grudgement, judgment and grudges. So really, at the end of the day, if there's any sense of resentment is almost the opposite of forgiveness as a sensed feeling. And so, but it can also be around forgiving the self, and that's where it comes into like what the some of the areas of self-care is to bring love and forgiveness. So that sense of whatever I've done in the past that I may be judging myself on requires a process of forgiveness. So really forgiveness is present in the presence of wanting to shift from blame, shame, judgment. We can't stop the judgment process that comes up because it's there to go, am I safe or am I dangerous? So there's an internal judging that goes on, but it's never really helpful to hold on to it. So it's there to discern initially. There's this sort of what we call in positive intelligence is this sense of to know whether I'm safe or a danger or want to take an action or not take an action, or whether someone else is safe or dangerous, or whether there's past stories about whether I was safe or dangerous or in the future. what may be safe or dangerous, there's this, what do I do about this information? That comes from the internal decision making processes about whether to move towards something or move away from it, as a interact with it and build on it or not, as a relationship or as a thing or myself. What do I want to learn? What do I want to grow from? Anything that comes from this internal decision making process automatically can split off into either discernment, which is non-attached decision making processes to learn, or there's the opposite side, which is to judge something as right or wrong, good or bad. And that bit's not useful for us, but we do and have attached to those things in the past from very early ages through messaging and stories from other people judging things. So this negative judgment that comes on that makes it either good or bad is has is and has always been passed on from somewhere else in the past. So therefore, it's all kind of made up. No matter what someone does that is perceived as morally good or morally bad, they will have reacted upon something that they learn about that. If someone like, so there's a phrase that hurt people,
Yeah.
um, as something that, if someone was hurt, and it's a nice analogy to come back to go, if someone's hurting someone in any given moment, how much have they been hurt to have done that? And if we don't recognize that, then what happens is, and we're judging them for them hurting someone, then what we're doing in that moment is imagining that we're thinking that we're judging them, but it's a mirror of something that we feel hurt about, and it creates a sense of that reality going forward. So when we judge and it's feels negative, that negativity is being held on in our cells, and that is only ever hurting us unless we're trying to make something happen. So the actually it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of that negative cycle that could cause anger, shame, judgment, blame, fault, all that kind of stuff. Is if it's we're perceiving it outside of us, but we're feeling it, we're actually living it inside ourselves. And so the only way to undo that self-fulfilling prophecy and create a more positive, joyful life is to recognize that and fill us ourselves up with the forgiveness process, as well as, whether it feels good or not, if we're not forgiving everything external, then we're not forgiving ourselves, and nothing will move forwards. It'll constantly always be a fight if we're fighting it, and if we're fighting it inside, that's that's emotional turmoil and blockage, and it can actually stop us from moving forwards with our lives. So that's the reason why to forgive as well, at the same time as what potentially forgiveness is as a source, energy, power.
Thank you, Rory. That's an awesome intro. I have no idea how I'm going to quite respond to all of that at the moment. Bear with me. That was not, that was an entire coaching program, bless you. I have made some notes now. Honestly, amazing. Yeah, so definitely there is. Early on, you said about the internal and external point of that, and I definitely get that in terms of when we're forgiving somebody else. There is two aspects of that. One is forgiving them for so that they can appease their shame and guilt and feelings. So we can actually forgive somebody else for their emotional healing. but we can also forgive somebody else for our own emotional healing. And that's the one that a lot of people find hard to comprehend. And especially when you're talking about what people have done to us because of what they're going on. And that's when people are in victim mode. So when somebody is subject not to little things like, oh, sorry, I spilt your coffee over, that's okay, don't worry about it, I forgive you, you know, that kind of level. And when we're talking abuse and trauma level, then the forgiveness is a much bigger attachment emotionally to achieve. And it's the thing that keeps people stuck for many, many years. And I have to admit, I have been there. For little things, yes, we get used to doing it. But at the same time, we've also got a culture. In our British culture is very much a blame culture. And on the smaller things, there are a lot of people grow up learning from family, from society, from schools, colleagues, workplaces, that blame is important to pass on over all the little things as well. Like, oh, you just did that and you did that wrong. And it's kind of the culture that builds all the micromanaging as well. Is, you know, when you've got managers of running companies who are in a blame culture, constantly going around and doing all the little bits of micromanaging, oh, you're doing this wrong, you need to do it that way. And they're not actually empowering their staff. So we're going on different levels here. So forgiving other people for little things is the easier one to start on. Yes, you forgot to buy the extra pint of milk on the way back from the supermarket. That's okay, I forgive you. I should have written down a list. What could we have done in that part of preventing that situation? Or how could we have supported the other person is a good way to look at it. And not only that, when we look at how it makes us feel, blaming that person for something small, how does it make you feel? Like, genuinely sit with those feelings. How does it make you feel? But then when you're talking the really, really big things like the abuse and letting that go, even though something happens and you may never see that person again, it might be something like an attack or something, and you're holding on to that blame for years. Oh, my life is in victim mode, whatever you're in, for X amount of years because of what that person did to me. Now, it's not a type of blame. When it was a type of blame we kind of hang on to with that, and I do get it, I've been there. And it's not about then appeasing their emotions, because that's a form of forgiveness where you don't even need to see that person. And that's about accepting in stages, acknowledging what actually happened, recognizing the feelings that it brings, realizing that holding on to that blame is actually hurting you and not them. And then learning that the forgiveness part is about detaching yourself, not removing it and forgetting it, but detaching yourself from the blame actually gives yourself a sense of peace internally. And the more you can do this, starting with the little things and get used to that, the more easier it becomes over the bigger things over time. And I had something happen to me, and it took me about 10 years to learn that. But once I realized that actually I had this kind of light bulb moment one day. Hang on a minute, I'm still blaming this person for something they did to me 10 years ago. Now, I hadn't seen that person after, and yet they were still holding power over my life, and they had no idea how I'd been feeling those 10 years. Why was I letting them steal my future? Because that was mine, not theirs, and that was my decision. And it took a long time to get there, and I wish I'd have had help and guidance and somebody telling me that. But instead, I was surrounded by family who, when conversations came up, still kept reinforcing that blame culture. Oh, yeah, and so what they did to you, and they deserve whatever they get. And so that very negative talk around you from family, from friends, from colleagues can actually keep reinforcing that sense of blame and prevent you from forgiveness. And so when you recognize that the forgiveness is a sense of finding peace in yourself and learning to almost distance yourself from that toxic conversation, it is a very powerful place to be. Look at that. I think
Yeah.
that hit the note with Rory.
And the crowd goes wild.
Thank you, Rory.
Thank you for sharing that. It's really important to recognize that. Yeah. And that's the we've probably said recognize twice each as well, because I think it's one of the things around my inspired decision making process is the first step to recognize what's going on. And in any moment, as soon as that recognition is there, it becomes awareness to bring a choice. And so, what I loved about what you said around that was noticing how far back those things go. And again, not to, and what I like to bring is remembering not to make ourselves wrong when we do recognize it or make someone else wrong from the recognition of the pattern in itself. Because when the pattern gets noticed, it can often be, especially if it's in a conversation, if you're noticing it with a conversation, the idea is to, or the feeling is to want to fix that in the moment. And that can actually just cause more argument because when recognizing it from the negative space inside the struggle, as soon as we try to fix anything from inside a struggle, we're actually just the judgment flipped in our minds, thinking we are this thing, and it's actually just a trick of the shadow mind or the judgment to go, oh yeah, I'm noticing that and I'm fighting against it. If there's any kind of fight or struggle or resistance, that's and it's justified, then we're still inside it. It's just another trick of the mind, a trick of the mind, of trick of the ego, trick of that sense. And it's just a trick. Remember, I need to just remember to come back to the idea that as soon as we recognize it's a trick and we don't want to fight it, recognize, refresh, and calm down from that, because that's to take the step out and to just calm down and not attach to it, because a trick can be a magic show as
Yeah.
well. So if we think, oh, I've just tricked myself, or I'm feeling like I'm being tricked, or this is a tricky situation. I like the word trick because most people think, oh, it's a trick, I'm being played, or and if it's inside here or out there, no, we couldn't hear anything. But yeah, that trick when it feels sticky, tricky, that's the opportunity. Recognize and refresh, calm down, and think what magic could come from this trick instead. Think of it reframing. So, um,
I like that comparison between magic and being tricked because what's the difference? Magic is tricking the perception.
it's only
But
perceived
it's,
of whether it's right or wrong.
yeah, and that's the difference. We see magic as wow, that's wonderful. And a trick is like, oh, no, can't be tricked. And it's the same thing, essentially. I love that comparison. Yes.
Yeah. So I've got a couple more points I wanted to, because I think this is probably enough for me, unless there's anything else that comes up. Obviously, but from my perspective, there's four things that come up. One is I loved what you were saying about noticing it as a thing that comes up and it's been there for years. It's or the level of whether how strong that is ingrained and how again it comes down to perception at any moment, but something little can feel little, something big can feel big. In any given moment, if we get strong at those, if we get used to being able to forgive from the bigness and work on it 1% every single day, for instance, and calm that down to for ourselves, for our own forgiveness, and not to forgive just to say it was okay for that to happen. That's not what we're saying, but the emotional thing that's hurting ourselves, that's not okay to not to not let go of. So it's not just a case of, oh, I should be letting go of it, because the letting go in itself isn't part. That's what happens when we do forgive. Forgiveness isn't letting go. We can't let go when we've learnt if we believe something, if we
Mm.
believe something, like I believe that that really hurt me in the past, that's a belief. That is literally cells stuck together in your mind, just like I've lifted this muscle and I built this really big belief muscle in my physical body that I can pick up this thing and I'm picking up this belief every single day. Just trying to put that down, it won't happen because we've got this whole structure in the brain that is a belief system around that.
Mm.
That's why
Yeah.
the emotion feels big around it. But it's if someone that has no attachment to that and you told that story to them, they're not going to be affected by it at all. So it's not that the thing is real in our minds anymore. It's the past.
Yeah.
So, so, and there are people that have worked, that it's the thing is the forgiveness piece is a process. It's a practice. It's an ongoing process. And it's just like anything. If it's like a phobia, I like to describe it. So, if phobia of being scared of something is just the same as holding on to some kind of grudge.
Yeah.
Process is the same. There's still learnt patterns in the brain because one person is scared of spiders and one person isn't. One person loves spiders and has them running around their arms all day, as an example. That it's not the thing. It cannot be the thing and never is the thing. So if anything was it's been learned. That thing that someone did something to me or I did something to me in the past. It's completely learned and it's still learned, just like a maths exam or something like that. So it's not that you can necessarily completely subconsciously forget that maths exam you took that caused that thing. However, what we can do is just let it settle and let it be and reaffirm it, recognize, refresh, and rehearse something different. That point in time means I can be this now because of the forgiveness process that's grown. That forgiveness muscle is grown to go. If that didn't happen, I wouldn't be able to learn how to forgive myself.
Yeah.
How about that as a reframe?
Oh, amazing. Thank you, Roy. Yeah, some really, really good reflections there. A lot. And there's a lot of visual out there, and the whole point of learning. And I love what you're saying about, in a way, that blame, shame, guilt is stuff we've learned and been taught to learn and had reinforced in us. But at the same time, we can relearn, we can reprogram, or another word that's very often used is reframing as well. So it's about reframing the thoughts, the feelings, the processes to serve us better. And I've made a few more notes just on the back of that as well, things that are coming up for me as we're talking through this. So, just first of all, to reinforce that when we're talking about forgiving somebody, if you are a victim of something or somebody, this is not about allowing yourself to continue being a victim by forgiving. If somebody is subjecting you to victim behavior, then there are still boundaries and barriers to put in place. So forgiveness is, if it's about yourself on that level, does not mean allowing people to still trample over your boundaries and your barriers. And there again, there is an episode we did early on about boundaries and barriers. So it's another one to refer back to. And, together, all of these conversations in this podcast are powerful overall as lifelong learning. Um, I also like what you're saying about the muscles and the structure and not being able to let go of entirely. And if we're reframing, I think one of the ways that I found really helpful um, was about putting down. Now, I always said if I'm carrying something around, and it's say, imagine these are all really heavy metal rods in here, and every one of them is a problem, a trauma, something somebody's done to me, and they keep adding them in, and I'm like overwhelmed with all of this stuff, and it's heavy, right? The one thing I can guarantee with all of the traumas in my life, if I put them down and I've got my hands free, Nobody is going to run off and take them away from me. But that doesn't mean I have to carry them around all the time. When I need to deal with one of them, I can go back to the pot. I can take out the one I need to deal with, sort it out, and put it back down again. And that's kind of how I've learned over time that if I need to talk about a certain thing, and certainly when we're talking about a lot of these things, it brings up memories for us. And I know it will for both of us for different reasons. And talking about these topics will trigger. And that's another one I want to come to is triggers. But it's about learning to mentally be able to say, I don't need to carry it all the time. And that's what the forgiveness gives you that sense of, is being able to put that weight down. But I can guarantee you it is the one thing you can put down in life no one's going to run off with. It is there when you need to come back and address it. And that for me was a powerful way of being able to let go of some of the things that I'd been carrying, was to be able to reframe that, putting them down. Some people might put them in boxes or put them in cupboards. And there's different ways, and however you choose to image that in your mind. But for me, it's just like, then my arms are free, like my sense of self is free by doing that.
Mm.
And so I thought this is a really another good one to talk on, Rory, is recognizing when we need to learn to forgive as well, when we need to forgive, and the signs that we might not be forgiving somebody. And the one that comes up for me is there's two things. One is triggers, and that is what triggers us into reacting, having negative thoughts, feeling tense, how much tension we're carrying, physical strains and pains. So I know there's a lot of this in your holistic health you'd cover. And the other one I just want to briefly touch on is we're talking about forgiving, and forgiving usually comes in, and I know I talk about it on the bigger level, we also talk about the little things, is victim mode, but it also about being able to move from victim mode to survivor, which a lot of people can do. But even in survivor mode, it's still possible to carry a lot of that blame and go, yeah, I survived that and they did this and that. But then there's thriving. So it's moving from victim to survivor to thriver. And the person who can then say, do you know what? Everything I went through has made me who I am today.
Yes.
There it is again.
Yeah, I love it. I'm just following on from noticing those thoughts, feelings, and things. The idea of what you said about if if you don't know there's something you want to work on,
Mm,
listening out for it. And my thoughts on it are that there's no way that we can be at all adults in the world without forgiveness. This is my offering to think about, is that there's no possible way we can be humans in any, even if we're feeling balanced, generally in life and doing the things we want to do. It's whether it's obvious or not, it is a consistent daily practice. We may be not knowing we're doing it in some way. If we're like happy with our lives, then we're probably doing it in some way or another to be happy, because forgiveness is to forgive ourselves and others enough to be staying present so that it doesn't bother us with those things, because we can't have got here without being impressed upon with what is right or wrong in the world. And
mm,
so no matter what level you're at, I literally do this every single day, every single morning, to be able to stand up and be a neurocreative leader, whether it's standing on a stage or just being me, and to get on with what I've learnt from what I would be blaming. I was blaming the school systems, all the systems. I had really no evidence, physical evidence at all. I've gone through timeline studies. I've had NLP work. I've done all these different things, And I've gone through my whole timeline multiple times, and every single day now, I still go back to the only thing I can think of, which would be like the past life passing on of of whatever causes wars and systemic problems, and that's the only thing that I can think of that could possibly have passed along that I found evidence for when I've been rejected by people, and I get a sense of rejection every single day because of something learned in my childhood, and I can't I have no thing where I can say a specific thing where I was like physically rejected or treated, other than a few things that I found evidence for in my childhood that would have been normal in the playground at school, or or things like that. So my point being is that no matter what kind of life you have, again, it's like it is something to be able to step up and 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 be awesome in the world, or I like to say, is to be working on that as a hand on heart, relax, 5 minutes of connecting to what the heart really wants. Even if that's not thought of forgiveness, it's still feeling whole. To feel whole, forgiveness has to be present. It's
Yeah.
forgiving. It's forgiving to the self, the taking the separate entity being that feels separate from the universe or the world in those moments, the ego, whatever you want to call it. If I'm not feeling that, filling that up, even for 5 minutes, I'll start to go out of sorts in my day, my week.
I can
Um,
see me and you having a big chat about that off camera as well. I have some
um,
thoughts on that one, but not for here today.
okay.
Um,
One last thing I'll say around that is that the when you said about noticing what it is that could potentially cause that, if it's not known what it is, and listening out for the thoughts and feelings, or listening out for the word. This is the thing that changed my life, was listening out for the words people say, and how it lands for me. So if someone says out of the blue, you need to do this or you should do that, that immediately feels like I'm being told what to do. No one wants to be told what to do without permission, and so it's automatic. I sometimes we it's I I sometimes do that because it's totally normal. Again, in our language processings, what we've been passed on, it's non-stop said about, people saying, when you do this, or we should be doing this as humans, or anything that's not from the I suppose, I should, I feel, I believe, I suggest, that's okay because it's coming from the I. Anything that says you or we is something to listen out for. And it could be if it's gentle, that's, and it means well, then it's okay. But listening out for those words, but not judging them, because again, it's immediately forgiving them and forgiving ourselves. It's noticing when they come up, like a bit like your analogy of the picking up the pot. If you've got a coin, one way's got like a hand that feels like a no, it feels like a embodied. I just didn't feel right when someone said that, or when I had that own thought, but not just going and then go. It's that thing of it becomes obvious. It becomes obvious to now if I was to say it, like, oh, if got the feeling of a hand going resistance, oh, I didn't like what someone just said then, but then just staying with it rather than going, oh, I just forgive that for a moment, and I've got like the 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 winning side. That's a choice. I can literally recognize it, feel it, and just it doesn't make it now that I've said it.
self-analysis, yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to sit there and go anymore, because you can literally just turn it over and say, I see them. They're trying to say something. If I forgive them,
They're now taking my scaffolding down. All right,
oh,
let's.
you can't hear it whatsoever.
No, I can again. So yes, sorry, bear with me. Let me just knock and say 5 minutes.
So yeah, noticing those words, noticing those words,
I'm recording.
and um,
Right.
thinking of it as a
Right.
mirror. I would say it's about thinking of it as a mirror as well. So if that's like if the hand is coming up, going from inside me, and it's like, oh, I'm feeling like I'm being judged, then in that moment, then the mirror is that I'm judging myself, judging them. So I get to flip it over, and I can use whatever's external as a mirror for the inside of me, treating the way I would, how do I want to be treated in that moment? And again, like you said, stepping back if it's necessary. If it's in a conversation, then we have the choice to flip that. And is it self-care first, just to come away and relax? Or
Yeah.
is it a proprietary practice
Mm.
every morning, just going, how do I want to show up? What do I want to do? Can I feel whole? All that stuff. As I say, imagine the emotional anchor, emotionally anchoring what feels good, what doesn't, and using it to flip that into forgiveness in any moment or as a daily planning scenario.
No, I really love that, and there's so much. Sorry, my head's kind of going now after the distraction, but the kind of final bit I want to throw on all of that is because I realise I've got to wrap up so they can make a lot of noise. Is also the narrative that we do share with other people when we're just continuing that. And I've noticed this a lot over the years when you're going through something and people just are kind of there and they seem supportive and they don't say a lot. And then whether it's a relationship comes to an end or a job comes to an end or something comes to an end, and then you tell people, well, by the way, that relationship's over, that job's come to an end. They instantly come out with all that, oh yeah, men, they're all this, and that job, well, that was a waste of, and they come out with this really toxic narrative. And so if you're one of these people that does that to other people, again, it's being aware also of the blame that again we reinforce in others, because by doing that it's also a sense of holding blame in ourselves when we're putting it on other people, but it's also like paying forward your own trauma onto somebody else in that moment, and a sense of preventing them from healing. And I know when I went through divorce, the first thing everybody wanted to do was just absolutely trash my husband's reputation because I said I'm getting divorced. And I was strong enough to say, no, I'm not accepting that. The divorce is between me and him. What happened is not about anybody else, is not about blame. And okay, I went through my own things later on for different reasons, but I had to be very strong in saying that is not the way I want to be thinking, not the way I want to be feeling. And I wanted to be coming from that point of peace from the outset. And, and it can be little things like a child's had a bad day at school, or someone's had a bad day at work, or the car's broke down, and, a week after it's been to the garage, whatever it is, somebody's 5 minutes late for a meeting. And what language we use when that person, we encounter that person, is a big part of the British culture for certain. And that is one of the things I think is really important to start discussing more, because by talking about it, it's the only way we're going to help people to change, to heal, and to forgive. And they're going to carry on regardless out there now. So thank you ever so much, Rory, for another amazing conversation today.
That's all right. Yeah,
Um,
amazing. I love what you said there. More conversations. And as a little tiny add on, and this is probably quite a it's probably quite a statement that could be just to notice again, but I want to bring the idea that there can be no victim without the victim believing they are a victim. And so I just want to I'm saying, and I also want to say that imagine or feeling that if there's an emotional anchor or a weight to this that is really struggly about that process, that is not something that just can be suddenly um done something about it. It's if you know that look into forgiveness practices, and you know we can start. I certainly have started doing that for myself every single day. Um, However, please remember that sometimes these belief systems that have been come along from all of before till now, I would not be where I am without learning something from some expert. It's not coming through whatsoever. Oh yeah, yeah, because you got it on mute. It wouldn't. It wasn't coming through. Sorry if it's upsetting you. Yeah. So that idea of support from people that have done the thing to be able to move forwards. I there's just no way I would have learnt that myself. And I could there's no matter how much YouTube videos I watch or books I would read, if I haven't got an embodied sense of guidance through that process, then I would not be have been able to um shift the way I have gone from uh all of that. I literally don't blame anything more than in the moment noticing those things happen now, and that really has given me a sense of complete freedom. So if you want that, then if you're resonating with either K or I, then please reach out. We're there. We're there to help with those processes.
And that's
And
not to say what somebody's been through is wrong to hold on to or to be in that victim mode, because if you've been victim to something, that's genuine and it's not invalidating that at all. It is about learning the healing process and actually, let's say, going from victim mode because you have been a victim, but moving into the survivor and the thriving mode and helping you with that journey when you've got all of the other narrative around you that's holding you back, even if it's in yourself. So there is always potential to have a happy life, to find your higher self. And that's why we're here, the High Leverage Actions podcast. And thank you for listening to us today about forgiveness and very briefly, the sound of honoring and see it. All the scaffolding. This is second floor, and there's a man outside my window.
there's no scaffolding sounds coming through. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I know you can't hear it. It's very noisy for me. So they've decided not to wait for me. So thank you. Thank you very
Comments,
much.
likes, shares, or what is it called? Any questions?
Subscribe, anything. Yeah.
And we'd
Okay.
love to hear from you.
Thank you, Rory. We'll see you again next week for another topic.